There are certain trips or travel experiences that change us. There's a before and there's an after. For me, Chile is one of those trips. Hey there and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashely Liliana. So it's no secret that I've lived abroad before. If you've been here since the beginning, you've known that I've lived in Chile for a year and then I went back for 6 months, so in total a year and a half. As someone who within the past year or so started realizing that I was having all of these experiences but never taking the time to be intentional about reflecting and thinking about what these experiences meant and how I have changed. And for me, one of the biggest parts of my life, which was travel, I never took the time to really look at just all of my travels, but those in particular really have impacted me. I kept thinking, what are some questions I could answer as the person I am now? How has the Ashely from that period of time and now changed? And the idea is that maybe in the process of me sharing these questions, that you can use these questions to reflect on a travel experience that has changed you, made you look at life differently, however that reads for you. I sat and I thought, what are some questions that I can think? And this isn't like the most extensive list, of course. These are the ones that I came up with to help me reflect on my experience that is Chile and my life in Chile. But I'm also going to share those with you today. These questions are not just solely for people who have lived abroad or studied abroad for an extensive amount of time. Whatever trip has changed you, whatever travel experience that has impacted you, you can use these questions for that particular experience. So let's get started. Who were you before the trip? So before I went to Chile, I was 25 and I was going to be turning 26 there. I was working at a nonprofit, working in human resources, and I got the chance to travel to Kenya, travel to Peru for work. But I couldn't help but feel that like this was not what my soul was meant to do in life. And I know that may seem very privileged because I had a job and I had that stability, but I was really sad because I just kept thinking, I'm not happy here. But you know, as a first gen daughter and the oldest, I was like, I have a job, I have stability, I'm working at a nonprofit, which was something I wanted at the time. It just seemed like a dream job, but then dream jobs and dreams maybe sometimes are hardly ever what they seem. I wanted to experience, to travel, to see places. And these little bits of travel that I was getting, like going to Kenya, going to Peru for work, all I kept thinking was, I just want to stay here. I just don't want to go back. I just want to stay and live here, and can I work here, you know? And so I realized that one of my dreams that I've always wanted was to live abroad. And I thought, this is my time to do it. I think that person was also someone who was very brave because she was in a period of her life where everybody was like working, all her friends were there, her family, and I love my parents, but obviously they wanted me to like have stability and like be okay. I'm gonna follow my heart and follow my gut, and I am going to go live abroad. Even though I found the program for Chile at the time, I still was not accepted. And I had told my boss in September, and I didn't find out for sure until November that I was going. I think I told my boss in August and I didn't find out until November, like for sure. But I told her basically, I'm leaving the beginning of the new year because I'm gonna go live abroad. And I had nothing for sure. I had no contract, I had no flight ticket. I was just like, this is gonna happen and I'm gonna do it. Just like took that leap and that jump and just really had faith that that net was going to be there and everything worked out fine. And so I think it was these two things of this person who was really struggling with just wanting more different to get out there, and then someone who actually was scared but had the faith and the courage to take certain leaps and trust that it was going to work out. And I'm proud of that person. What drew you to this trip, location, or country? The dream was always Spain, and I always thought that when I lived abroad it was going to be Spain. But when the time came to go and teach abroad, the same program that I did teach in Chile, the company also had locations in Spain, in Madrid. I was like, no, I want to live in South America. I think also a big part of like that whole thing was that was a summer where I just really wanted to be really close with my roots. So everything that was like Latin America, I just wanted to fully be consumed by it as much as possible. There was something like yearning inside of me. It was so natural because I didn't even resist it, because in my head I was like, well, Spain, but at the same time I was like, no, like you're going to South America. I wanted to go to a country that I haven't been, so like that was like one of the requirements, and one that I could like find programs that I could teach. And when I searched, Chile was one of the countries that popped up. I didn't really know much about Chile beforehand, and it was honestly one of the easiest decisions, so fluid, so natural. I just knew, I don't know how to explain it other than I just knew I had to go there. That's how I ended up in Chile in 2019. Did you have any intention set for your time abroad? No. The only thing I think that I had in terms of like intention, I never got to study abroad, and so I knew that this was my moment in my 20s. If this was like the only thing I was going to do in my 20s, it was living abroad. And that was pretty much the intention of it. I will say now though that I am much more intentional about the trips that I take. I do have a particular intention. I don't stick to it so hard, but even like this solo trip that I'm currently on in Andorra, there's an intention behind it of like, what is the goal of this trip? And it's nothing too strenuous, nothing too particular, because you want that flexibility and that room for life to surprise you and the trip itself or the move abroad. But I'm much more intentional about it. When I was in Chile the first time and the second time, I didn't particularly have an intention. It was kind of honestly, even the second time, it was just like the same thing. Like, I need to be in Chile. Who were you during your time abroad? Living in Chile, it was the first time that I really didn't feel so much anxiety. I didn't feel like I had to pretend to be something I was not. I didn't feel the pressure. The city, I loved going to work. I loved going to teach English. Of course I was nervous. I felt independent. I felt like I was owning my life in a sense. It was the first time that I was living in my own apartment. I mean, I had roommates and stuff. And I was working abroad. Like, I was being an adult, but in another country. And that felt very powerful in a sense because I was navigating my life, but in a different country that wasn't speaking my native language. There was a lot of hiccups and obstacles, and it wasn't easy for sure, but I was very open during that time. I felt very free. Loved the Ashely that was there during that time. She was not perfect. She still had a lot of stuff that she was figuring out. A lot of things were changing around that time. I really love like that person who was there during that time, even with like the loneliness, and some days were very hard, but she was much more aligned. They were much more in tune with herself, much more open. She was great, the Ashely during that period of time. She changed a lot. She became more confident to a certain extent, not 100%, but a little bit more confident. She trusted herself a lot more. Is there anything you would have done differently? Yes and no. There was a period towards the end that I wanted to stay. But I think in my own head, I had this idea of like not staying because I was like, I want to go and continue to travel and see the world and chase like the next thing. There's a big part of me that really wanted to stay and kind of live out that life. There's like this TikTok that says like, I think about all the versions of me that didn't get to live, you know, in a sense. It's like the girl who could have gotten the job here, or the one who could have lived here or lived abroad here. I think about sometimes, you know, the Ashely, that version of me who, if she stayed, you know, what that life would have been like. And so I don't want to say I would have done anything differently, but I think that point, what happened is I listened too much to people, and they didn't do it maliciously. Maybe it was a self-preservation, or maybe it was a combo of just what they only knew, you know? But I listened too much of other people's idea of if I stayed, what that meant, and even my own like ideas of if I stayed, what that meant. But I would have blocked out the noise a little bit of what other people were telling me, and I would have sat down and just, what is it that I want? What I need? I think that would be the only thing that would be different. But at the same time, I'm also a believer that things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And I think in retrospect, it happened the way it's supposed to, because if it didn't, then I wouldn't have gone home, and then I wouldn't have felt lost, and then I wouldn't have met Danny, and then started YouTube, and then gone back and done these wonderful videos about Chile, and then would have met the people that I've met here. I think the biggest thing for Barcelona has been like just the special people that are in my heart, and also things about myself, self-love journey, and the journey about like just accepting, you know, myself a lot more. Wouldn't have happened maybe if I would have stayed, or maybe it would have happened, but maybe it would have taken longer. I don't know. So who's to say? That's like the thing I would say I would do differently. But at the same time, I don't know if I would, because maybe it was all supposed to happen the way it was supposed to happen. What was the hardest part of the experience, and what did it teach you? I think the hardest part, that loneliness. Everybody like knows the culture shock graph. You have like the honeymoon phase and all that stuff. Well, that period when you're kind of going down in the bottom, the loneliness felt very amplified. I think that was probably the hardest part, was just dealing with that loneliness. You're in a different country, your support system is back home, you're speaking Spanish to communicate day-to-day life. And so for me, the hardest part was that I just felt lonely for a period of time. It was a reminder that learning to be with yourself, with your own thoughts, is super important, because now I'm on a solo trip and I love it, and I love traveling alone and being alone. And even when I am now in Barcelona, I crave like that time and space to be on my own, something that I didn't crave so much when I was in Chile. And so that definitely was I think one of the hardest things during that period of time. Who were you after the trip? Oof, I think like a different person, honestly. My essence of like who I am as a person for sure is the same, but it changed everything. It changed my priorities. It changed how I saw my life. It changed what I wanted for my life. Every belief system, if you will, that I had created for myself up until that point was just taken and like flipped upside down. I was someone who was never really keen on wanting quote unquote a home base. I thought the idea of like staying in one place was horrible and like the worst thing in the world, and that meant stability and that you're settling and all of these things. Very childish of me. And Chile was the first place that I ever was like devastated to leave, and that I cried when I went back. It changed everything. Priorities. I started to think about life a little bit differently, the rhythm of my life, what I value in life, what I want in life. You know, I think you asked me before, or even like during that time, I was someone that's like, I want to travel to as many places as I possibly can. I want to hit the 30 by 30. I want to live in every continent if that's possible. Probably not, like at least the majority of the continents, and I'll figure out anyway. And then all of a sudden I was like, that is exhausting. I had no desire to travel as much. Even in a way, the feeling of travel had almost left, of like wanting and liking that. Was like so foreign to me, and that was very scary because if I don't like to travel, and it's like, who am I? My identity had been built around that to a certain extent. And so for me, person after was someone completely different. I had no longer the same goals and dreams that I've once had. Wanting a home base and a pet and adopting my little animal babies one day were things that I started wanting more. All of a sudden, on the list of priorities, certain things started taking the number one or the top spot, and other things not so much. And so that was a different change. And I didn't know how to handle that change for a minute. I was a little taken aback at first, but yeah, I changed completely after that trip. Priorities, dreams, goals. I also think the person who was during that trip and even before wasn't very kind to herself, self-love and all of that stuff. I really didn't didn't do that whatsoever during that time. I didn't know how to. What was the most important lesson you learned about yourself during the trip or time abroad? That you are your best travel partner in life. Yeah. And that if this relationship with yourself isn't good, it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter how far away you go, how long you're away. It doesn't matter. If this isn't good, nothing else will be good. And that life will give you the people that you need in the time and place that you are in. More than anything, you are your best travel partner, your best partner in this life. And if you don't know how to be with yourself, life can get really lonely, and traveling can get really lonely, and living abroad can get really lonely if you're not good with a travel partner that you're stuck for the rest of your life with. So, do you have any plans on returning? 100%, hands down, and I can't wait to go back. And I look forward to the day that I can finally head back to a place that I consider home. Thank you so much for watching. You can download all the questions in this video down below. See you in the next one.